The sedate town of Conway on Britain's North Wales coast couldn't offer a greater contrast for the athletes about to face one of the world's toughest mountain challenges, the Dragon's Back.
The 92 Dragon's Back race became famous. Slowly this kind of legend built around this incredibly difficult and challenging multi-day race.
People from around the world gather here in Wales to take on one of the hardest mountain running races in the world. Over the next 5 days, these people are going to run 315 kilometres. They will climb almost twice the height of Everest. This is the Dragon's Back race.
You may be wondering why I'm wearing this tired, faded t-shirt. But this is actually the original 1992 Dragon's Back t-shirt. And I only bring it out on special occasions. And I'm wearing it today in homage to the most amazing and exciting event that I ever took part in.
The inaugural running of the Jet Dragon's Back race was thought to be so daunting that Colonel Joe Poraj-Wilensky and his men from the British Army's Parachute Regiment were asked to provide race support. The competitors, organised in pairs, represent the best of mountain, fell and ultra-distance running from around the world. Tom Posset from the United States, winner of the Death Valley race. Stefan Schlett from Germany. Britain's mixed pair, Helene Diamantides and Martin Stone. And a contingent of Paras, not to be outdone on their own stomping ground.
This was a new experience for all of us. It was like a 5-day elite, Kim, but in the setting of a journey the length of Wales, it meant so much more. The simplicity of living in the moment, with no distractions and with a very narrow focus on what we were doing, it was quite liberating.
The very first Dragon's Back race happened in 1992. Ian Wardle had just left the British Army and he was a real advocate of long distance walking and challenges. And he had this amazing vision at the time to create this multi-day race running essentially the length of Wales across the mountain spine of the country.
Here the terrain is as difficult as anywhere in the world. The autumn climate dangerously unpredictable. 3 hours into the race and the leaders have crossed 4 major peaks and covered nearly 20 miles. But still to come, the almost sheer 1,800 feet face of Travan, a high traverse across the Gliders, and finally Arwythfa itself, known in English as Snowdon, the highest peak in Wales at over 3,500 feet.
Helene and I knew the summit of Snowdon intimately, and we had a plan. And without pausing, we doubled back from the summit cairn, and within seconds were out of sight in the mist.
It takes the leading pairs over 6 hours to reach the summit of Snowdon. The first day honours will go to the British fell runners. 3 pairs, Walford and Clark, Belton and McDermott, and the mixed pair of Diamantides and Stone have established a significant lead.
Just to tell you a little bit about the calibre of these guys, Mark McDermott was the Lakeland 24-hour record holder. He'd taken that record from Joss Naylor in 1988. Adrian Belton had the record for Ramsey's round. He'd done the 3 big rounds in 29 days, and they both won the Elite Carrymore in 1991. Phil Clark and Mike Walford had both won Elite Carrymores in 1990 and 1981 respectively. So for our 3 British teams, this was going to, we were really going to be up against each other.
After nearly 7 hours of running, climbing, scrambling and navigating through mountain mists, the leaders reach the relative comfort of the road to the finish. Diamantides and Stone have made a break in the mists of Snowdon to establish a 2-minute lead. The other 2 leading pairs, much stronger on the flatter sections, are trying hard to close the gap. But day 1 will go to the only mixed pair in the race. They complete over 36 miles of the toughest terrain in the world in just under 7 hours.
We completed the descent to the camp and finished with a small but very satisfying 2-minute lead over Mark and Adrian. We had laid down the marker.
They stride into the finish looking as though they've just been for a gentle stroll in the hills, their appearance disguising their achievement. 9 of the original 27 pairs of elite runners have already withdrawn in the intense heat of the Dragon's fiery breath.
then we just nipped off the top of Snowdon Summit before they could gather themselves. It was really good.
But the three leading pairs, with finishing times only a few minutes apart, have struck a mortal blow. As the dragon retreats to lick its wounds, the runners must spend the hours of darkness as productively as possible. Rest and relaxation and vital nourishment for the next day's fight.
The parachute regiment turned this into a major exercise, logistical exercise of moving tents and crew and support all the way down the length of Wales. It had all the fantastic logistics you'd expect with a military event, a massive camp kitchen serving food at any time of day or night. It had well laid out tents, and it had a shower tent, which was rudimentary but quite entertaining. You'd take a pail of hot water into the tent, you'd pour it into a bucket which had loads of perforations in the bottom, and you hoist the bucket up, and then you stand under the bucket on a flattened trestle table and take your shower. It's quite good. In subsequent years, Shane's done a brilliant job of laying out tentage and logistics for huge numbers of people. But we were only talking about 35 teams here, I believe.
The organisational challenge for an event like the Dragon's Back race is very complex and complicated. And if I'm honest, that's one of the reasons I was attracted to organising it. I wanted a challenge for myself that would kind of be comparable to the challenge that the runners were taking on.
It's our daily, taking the tent down as quick as we can.
I'm worried about day 3.
I dread to think what's going to happen from now on, to be honest. I think we had a nice day today, and we'll just make that.
Tomorrow should be good because it's out in the hills as well. But then after that, you hit the more runnable stuff, which isn't quite our scene, which is why I tried to cash in on it as much as today as possible. One
of the defining moments of the 1992 Dragon's Back event was the head-to-head race between Martin Stone, Helene Diamantidis and their nearest rivals, and they kept swapping the leads backwards and forwards throughout the race, and on the final day there was an intense head-to-head battle.
The day started with a 10-mile road run, and we'd never really felt like road runners, and we always expected to be burnt off by the other teams. And yet our spies were now telling us that if anything, the gap was beginning to close.
There is a final act to the drama. It's played out high on the remote moonscape of the Black Mountains. McDermott and Belton begin to tire. It's Adrian Belton's turn to have a bad day. Helene Diamantidis is having her strongest day, driving her partnership forwards. They eventually recapture the lead, only to lose it almost immediately through a disastrous navigational error.
In the excitement, I'd misjudged the distance, and we were looking for the checkpoint in about a kilometre away from where we should have been. I was now running around like an idiot, desperate to relocate and work out where the hell we were. And I used up a huge amount of mental and physical energy.
But McDermott and Belton are a spent force. Belton is in severe pain from shin splints. Diamantidis and Stone descend from the mountains with an unassailable 30-minute lead. Carrigkennan, the imposing hilltop finish, is in sight.
And as we strode up the final section of track to the walls of Carrigkennan Castle, I knew that I was going to completely fall apart at the finish. And all I can say is that after 5 days of such close competition, victory was very sweet, and I was a complete emotional wreck.
After 5 days and 220 miles, the Dragon's Back is theirs. The press will make much of Helene Diamantidis' astonishing achievement in winning a race in the company of elite men. But the real victory belongs to her partnership with Martin Stone, to Sue Walsh and Wendy Dodds, who won the women's race, to Ian Waddle, whose dream it was to make the race happen, and to all the runners who travelled to the mountains of Wales to face the challenge of the Dragon's Back.
2012 was a completely different ballgame. I've been out of serious and competitive and long-distance running for quite some time beforehand. So I had 2 young children, and I was living in Harrogate, which isn't really well known for its big mountains, so training had to be completely different.
In 1992, I'd started to do lots of long-distance running, moved on from orienteering, and I was absolutely amazed when I heard about the Dragon's Back race and that people were doing 30-40 miles a day over the toughest terrain in Wales every day for 5 days.
In 2011 I had the idea of resurrecting the event, and I tracked down Ian Wardle, the original organiser from 1992, and I got his blessing to kind of resurrect the event. And I spoke with some of the original participants like Helene and Martin Stone, and slowly built a picture of what the new kind of resurrected event would look like, and that led to the 20th anniversary second edition of the Dragon's Back race happening in 2012.
The race has only been run once before in 1992 and is regarded as the hardest ultramarathon ever run in the UK.
Needing to sort of take time away from the family was a big ask. So before I actually started training, I went and did a bit of homework on Shane Oley to see if he actually was capable of putting the race back on again. Because if I was asking my family to give up this much time, I needed to be sure that it was going to be worth it and it wasn't going to be somebody else who was going to pull out. When I had a look at his CV and his resumes and the things he'd done, I think it was fairly obvious he was the man for the job. So I started training.
So by the time 2012 came along and I heard that Shane was putting on the Dragon's Back race again, I was really excited, really wanted to do it. I thought it was a great opportunity just to test myself over the Welsh terrain, see if I could manage to do those 30-40 miles a day.
Two of the race favourites, Steve Birkinshaw and Rob Baker, true to form, are leading out right from the start. On the ascent of Tryfan, Steve makes a decisive move. He's now in the lead on his own. By the time the runners hit Snowdon, the field has splintered. Steve still up in front, but looking tired. Helene Whitaker, winner of a 1992 Dragonback race, in 9th place.
And I was getting really dehydrated going up Crib Goch. It was like wobbling around, really suffering in the heat. And luckily from there it was only up to the top of Snowdon and all the way back, straight back down to the campsite, which is I think the one we still use now. But I got to the finish and I was pretty much a wreck. I weighed myself, well we was weighing ourselves as part of an experiment or part of a research that was going on, and I'd lost 5 kilograms during that day. And I knew I was going to be really struggling to get that amount of liquid back into me. And even worse than that, I just felt really sick. I could hardly eat anything. But I was desperate to recover so I could recover well for the next day and carry on moving fast over the rest of the week.
I was okay, and then I just really struggled for about 2 hours. There was a mountain called Crib Goch. I thought it was going to take about 50 minutes to get up. It took me 80. I was just like wobbling all over the place. I'd never get there.
In 1992, we'd had to use this book, Snowdonia to the Gower, which the race is based on. And we'd had to go through it day by day and work out where the course was going to be. There's little sketch maps in it, there's beautiful photos, and we had to transpose that onto 50,000 maps. So actually being given a map for each day was just so much easier. And yeah, it was hard work. I can't deny that 20 years older, coming to take it on again was a big thing, but it was something I really wanted to do.
The 2012 edition of the race was kind of uncharted territory for me as a race organiser. It was kind of the first time I'd taken on something that big on my own. And also kind of uncharted territory for the runners taking part, and very few of them had that kind of multi-day race experience. And although they were all kind of competent fell and mountain runners, we were all kind of on this journey of discovery together.
We've got 28 people still on the full course, and I think without exception all of those runners have got some pretty good mountain running experience. And the split between the ultra trail runners and the mountain marathon type runners has become very obvious, and it's the mountain marathon type runners that are prevailing by and large. But we've gone from nearly 100 down to 28 who yesterday had finished the full course.
So I ended up making some really good friends, and I just remember particularly on the very last hill, on the very last day before we dropped down to Carrick-Kennen, absolutely sobbing when I hit the last trig point, because I was so relieved that I was actually going to be able to finish it for a second time. It meant so much to be able to do that. Positions don't matter. It's always the challenge, and if you know that you're going to finish it when you stand on the start line, it's probably not a challenge, is it? So, it meant an awful lot to be able to do it again in 2012, 20 years afterwards. It really did. To come first woman was just the icing on the cake. It certainly wasn't my plan.
When I look back to the original Dragon's Back race in 1992, and then the first edition that I delivered in 2012, and I think about the changes and the evolution of the event, it's a real honour and a real privilege to think that I've been, I guess, the driving force behind those changes, but always very much part of a team of committed and dedicated people. Certainly, the legend that is the Dragon's Back race completely supersedes the contribution that I or any other one person has made to the event, and it's an amazing experience to be part of building something which is bigger than yourself, and it's with a real sense of pride and excitement as we go kind of towards that 2021 event, and we make that kind of full Welsh connection north to south, and I'm so excited about that new finish at Cardiff Castle. It will be amazing.
By the 5th day, everyone was suffering. You could see that a lot of people hobbling around. It's a tough old race, the Dragon's Back, and it just shows you how hard it is with all these fit guys walking in pain over the last day. But it was worth it. Getting through the finish, knowing I'd won the Dragon's Back race, an amazing feeling. Winning this trophy. Kids call it Dragon's Breath. And it's a great honour to have won this and have it sitting on the windowsill now. Reminds me every day I walk past it going up the stairs of winning the race.